life as we know it has changed irrevocably, and that in this seismic shift lies an opportunity to turn things around, improve our world, and make life better for the majority, especially in poor countries. It is time to reboot Nigeria. This is Pivotal. Is the Nigerian judiciary dragging itself into disrepute and undermining the very rule of law which it is supposed to protect and uphold? This is the question many are asking as they have watched judges and courts issue what appear to be, well, bizarre judgments. 2 weeks ago, the Rivers State High Court issued an interim injunction restraining Mr. Uche Secondus from parading himself as the national chairman of the opposition People's Democratic Party, the PDP. Shockingly, 2 days later, another high court, this time sitting in Kebbi State, ordered that Mr. Secondus be returned as the national chairman of the party. And then, wait for it, a third high court sitting in Cross River State restrained Mr. Secondus from resuming office as the national chairman of the PDP. It is almost as if the facts in this case and the constitution guiding the judgments differ depending on which high court is hearing the case. This is not the first time courts of coordinate jurisdictions are issuing orders and counter orders. This typically tends to happen with ex parte applications, in layman's language, emergency applications, and almost always in cases that involve politics, politicians, and political parties. In Anambra State, we saw a similar case around primary elections run by the All Progressives Grand Alliance ABGA party. Nominated candidates kept getting court orders, including from appeal courts, to cancel out each other's nominations. It is a legal mess, and the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Tanko Muhammad, seems to have had enough of it. He's reported to have summoned chief judges for a meeting originally scheduled for Friday, but which has apparently now been postponed. To when is not exactly clear, suggesting perhaps that the matter is not as urgent to the judiciary as has been presented in reports. Joining me to discuss these issues on this edition of Pivotal are retired Justice Olushola Williams and the head of the Judicial Commission of the Nigeria Bar Association, Dr. Babatunde Ajibade San. Thank you both for joining us on Pivotal.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Ma'am, what do you make of the summons by the Chief Justice to other justices and the fact that the meeting, which was supposed to be, we understand, taking place Friday, hasn't taken place, and as far as we can tell, there's sort of no date for it to take place?
Well, I don't know about a summons from the Chief Justice of the Federation to another Chief Judge. We've talked a lot about independence of the judiciary. We've talked about even the constitutional arrangement of a federation and states and their respective powers. But from what I've read in the press, it appears that the summons is from the Chief Justice of the Federation as the chairman of the NJC. Still, that will be questionable because I'm sure that there's a procedure that the NJC would adopt, for determining if some error has been made by judges or if disciplining erring judges or whatever. So this is a lot of what the press has said. And I think that's one of the reasons why the meeting isn't holding. We've heard all about this, but I didn't read the letter or anything like that. But it would be an odd arrangement because, a chief judge is meant to be head of court in his own state. And the Chief Justice of the Federation is head court. But if there's a meeting, maybe some informal arrangement to try to find out what is going on in these states, I think that may be what is happening.
Okay, I mean, and this perhaps boils down to the heart of the matter of this case, Mr. Ajibade, because purely from the point of view of the law, as I understand it as a layperson, courts of equal jurisdictions should not be issuing counter judgments. We see it though happening in this country. Is my interpretation of the law accurate, or am I wrong in my understanding of what the law says?
You're correct in your understanding of what the law says. The only reservation I would have is that, at least at present, as we speak, we don't have all the facts. As I'm sure my Lord, Honorable Justice Williams will confirm, a judge will determine a matter only based on the facts that are presented before him or her. We know that we have three, at least what the press has reported is that you have 3 orders made by 3 different courts within a relatively short period of time. But as at present, and we're making efforts by we, I'm referring to the NBA now, we don't know what facts were placed before those judges, before they made those orders. So for me, before one can, reach an informed conclusion as to the propriety of the orders made, as to the circumstances in which they were made, one would need to have insight into all the facts, know what facts were presented to those judges before they made the orders that they made.
Okay, so if we forget about talking about the specifics of these 2 cases that I've cited, which is the case to do with what's going on, the infighting that's happening in the opposition party, the PDP, and also what's going on in the run-up to the elections in Anambra State. Can we get a sense of what the law says regarding courts that are of the same standing when it comes to judgments on the same case?
You see, when we're talking in lay terms, yes, we're saying courts of coordinate jurisdiction shouldn't give the conflicting decisions. But it's not that it's the same case.
No, is it just conflicting decisions, or that they should actually not overrule the judgment of a court of the same standing?
Yes, so that's why I said, as a layman, that's what would appear to you, because perhaps you're looking at the substance and the end result of the decision. But I am very sure that, I assume, I don't know, let me just say, but it would be difficult for me to see that it is the same case that was filed in Rivers State that was then taken to Kebbi State, if you see what I mean. So just like Leonard was saying, there would have been a case before the Kebbi State judge, and he would have looked at the facts of that case. And it's not as if after he made his order, then somebody went and took that same case to Rivers State. What has happened is that 2, should I say, mischievous people filed 2 different suits that would have these results that affect one another in 2 different jurisdictions. And the judges looked, unfortunately, at those cases only, should I say, having a tunnel vision, looking at only the case before you without thinking of what is going on in another court. And another thing, just like Leonard Silk has said, if I don't have access to what is going on in Rivers State, I might not know that such an order might have been made. I might not know. So it's actually the parties who know what transpired. However, if that case then asks for an order for something to be enforced in another state, that would be wrong for the judge to do, because we have something, it's territorial jurisdiction. You can only make orders concerning what happens in your own state. You can't make, order, you can't be in Kebbi State and make orders to be enforced in Rivers State.
I mean, from the Dr. Ajibade, from the point of view of the layperson, again, I guess this is why sometimes that phrase, the law is an ass, makes a lot of sense to people like myself and a lot of other people who are sort of looking at political parties and politicians seemingly playing games with our judiciary based on technicalities. And the end result of this, of course, is that it does undermine confidence in the judiciary. Is this something that bothers you?
Of course, it bothers me. It bothers me tremendously. And the truth is, the political cases like the ones that you spotlighted, they're the ones that catch attention because obviously they're sensational, and the press will take that up. But this is not peculiar to political cases, and the inability of our justice sector to address this problem holistically it's a matter of grave concern, because as you said, it brings the judiciary, it brings the justice system itself into disrepute. And if I may just say, I mean, the question that you put to my lady initially about the propriety of the Chief Justice of Nigeria inviting the chief judges of the states in which this most recent set of orders were made. I beg to differ slightly, because again, we only have the information that has been published in the press as to what exactly this Chief Justice of Nigeria has tried to do. The language that has been used, which is what I think has caused concern, is that he has summoned the chief judges of the states. I mean, that is definitely inappropriate, if indeed that is what he did. But then if what he did was to invite them in his role as the head of the federal, head of the judiciary, to say we have a problem on our hands and we need to discuss how we're going to prevent these type of things from continuing to occur, I don't think that would be out of place at all. I mean, indeed, the concern you just expressed, you know, the concern we all have about the justice sector being brought into disrepute. I think if the Chief Justice of Nigeria did not do anything, we would also vilify him, you know, that, you know, the house is burning and you're supposed to be at the top of the pile and you're doing nothing to put out the fire. So I think the question as to whether he summoned them is definitely a question of language, but that he's shown some concern about what is going on, I think is a positive thing.
Let me quickly, before we take a quick break, allow Justice Williams to respond to this. And I ask this question also because Babatunde Fashonu's son seems to agree with you on this particular matter and says that the CJN may be setting, and I quote, a bad precedent, which can lead to abuse in the future. He said due process should be allowed to ensure. What do you think due process should be in this matter?
You know, even as I was closing my answer to that question, I said if the CJN called those chief judges to have a discussion, a sort of informal discussion, because we're all concerned about issues, that would be all right. But that is not, because I don't even know, it's not the chief judges, and a chief judge is only what is called primus inter pares. He's just the first of the many judges. So it's not the chief judges that made those decisions, from what I hear, and he cannot be responsible for the decisions of other judges. So that's the issue. Now, what is the proper thing? One of it lies with the NBA, because a judge doesn't just wake up and make orders. Somebody applied for those orders. So there has to be a proper disciplinary action taken.
Okay, I think I'm going to ask you to pause a little while we take a quick break. You are watching Pivotal, and we're talking about the judiciary, the rule of law, and whether some of their actions in recent days are undermining the very thing that they are supposed to be protecting. This is Pivotal. Stay with us. Welcome back. You are watching Pivotal, where we're talking judiciary, the rule of law, and bizarre or contradictory court orders, and what this means for the confidence that the regular Nigerian has on the judiciary. Now, the president of the Nigeria Bar Association, President Olumide Akpata, has said that the association will come down hard on lawyers who contribute to the ridiculing of the profession. Dr. Ajibade, what do you make of the intervention by the NBA, a body to which you belong to?
I think the NBA hopefully has finally found its voice, because this malaise is not new. These problems have been with us for a while. And the perception has been that the NBA has not been sufficiently up and doing in terms of meting out discipline to those of its members who participate in creating these situations. And I agree entirely with what my Lord Justice Williams has said. Obviously, judges cannot manufacture applications that lead to these sort of orders being made. A lawyer must have presented these applications. But what the NBA is doing, and I'm right in the middle of that, is to carry out a thorough investigation into the circumstances leading to the making of these orders.
Justice Williams, I mean, the NBA seems prepared to take responsibility and hold lawyers who are involved accountable. In listening to you, though, it seems as if, as a retired justice, you're almost 100% certain that judges are not to blame, and you don't seem prepared to say that judges should take some responsibility for some of what we're seeing. Am I correct, or did I misunderstand you?
I think you misunderstood me, because what the first point I made was that we haven't seen those orders, and Leonard still confirmed that we don't know the facts that were before the judge, but certain things are very general. Making ex parte orders. There is no reason to make ex parte orders when there's no urgency. And sometimes an urgency is self-imposed. The court should be more inclined not to make them, and should only make them in exceptional circumstances. And you cannot make an ex parte order that is going to be enforced in a jurisdiction that is different from yours, where you don't have jurisdiction. So, just going by those plain facts, but I do not know because whether you make or not an order depends on the affidavit evidence before you. What was said in the affidavit to warrant granting that order? What could have been said?
So how do we, in this sort of circumstances, hold judges and lawyers accountable, given that they are the final arbiters of the rule of law? And particularly, if you look at the fact that even amongst learned people like yourself, there's a lot of confusion regarding, okay, maybe this happened, maybe this didn't happen, unless we know the circumstances. I mean, how do we enforce rule of law on lawyers and judges?
You see, the principle of rule of law is that you don't just take accusations without investigation. So those judges also have to be investigated. And that is the job of the National Judicial Council. A report is made to them. The National Judicial Council would then check the circumstances, investigate the facts, then invite them to defend themselves if there's some accusation made against them. And the National Judicial Council has been doing that. So if this, all things have been investigated and we have found that there was no basis for making, I would know what basis there would be, but yes, there would be no basis for making this order, and this was done, and it cannot be supported under any law, and any judge worth their salt should know that so there must be some mischief involved. Then, of course, a recommendation will be made that they should be relieved of their post, or some other disciplinary action can be taken against them. So everybody, can face disciplinary action.
You said something really important, and I need you to clarify this for us very quickly. In the case of this particular matter to do with Uche Secondus, we've seen state high courts issue cases. And when you talk about jurisdiction, the PDP is a national party. So is it that the state high courts are not in a position to actually rule on this matter at all, as far as the law is concerned? Or are you saying that one state is supposed to be able to rule and then others shouldn't jump in once one state has taken the lead? It's a little bit confusing, because obviously the PDP is a national party and we're talking about a national chairman, and yet the judgments are coming from state high courts.
That isn't a question of jurisdiction.
Okay.
That's not a question of jurisdiction. It's not that there are political cases and political cases can only be heard. No, a high court has jurisdiction to hear any matter that is brought to him for orders within that state. If you know what I'm saying. These people, for instance, usually when you file a case, you have to convince the court that the court has jurisdiction over this matter because the defendants are residents in that state. Now, the PDP as a party would have its own, I don't know, offices within the states. So it wasn't a federal case that was taken to a state high court. It was a matter within the jurisdiction of the High Court. But if the order, because I read one of the news reports that, and there was supposed to have been an order from Kebbi State that the proceedings in another state, in Rivers State, should be stayed, that wouldn't be possible. That would be outside the jurisdiction of the court.
Finally, Justice, there is also a suggestion that the Nigerian disease of corruption has not necessarily skipped the judiciary. Do you believe that there is some corruption in the judiciary? And if so, how do we go about weeding it? Or do you not believe that there is corruption and you think that the problem is an issue of independence and us being able to sort of just ensure that everybody stays in their lane and follow jurisdiction and all of the sort of guidelines that have been given, and where the Constitution is clear, be able to stick to what the Constitution says?
Well, there's no doubt that corruption is endemic in Nigeria, and it affects every strata in Nigeria. Judges or whoever, they are a reflection of the Nigerian society. So there's no doubt that there is some corruption. And that is why we have the National Judicial Council. There always has to be checks and balances.
Is that council, in your view, enough to hold judges accountable, given that they have supremacy over the rule of law in this country?
Like I said, there will always be checks and balances. If the NJC does its job as it should, it will definitely be enough. Because
what if it doesn't? What are the other things that we can do? Or are we stuck with the NJC until we find a way to make them functional?
You're called the fourth realm, for instance.
Yes.
So there's that great, issue of public view. Now, if the public loses confidence in the judiciary, it's going to be very obvious. So there are many other, we have the NBA. There have been times when the NBA have refused to appear before a certain judge because of some, issue or the other like that. So there are always checks and balances. But I believe that the National Judicial Council is the major one, and it does its work, very well.
Dr. Ajibade, what are your thoughts regarding corruption? And if you believe that some of these allegations are actually correct, how do we begin to weed it out from something that is so critical to the rule of law in this country? It underpins everything and our ability to get things right. And therefore, we can't afford for it to be corrupt.
The perception when people talk about corruption in the judiciary is that judges, that you can buy judgments or you can get a decision if you induce the judge. But I think that the problem we have with the judiciary goes way beyond that. I'm not saying that that is not a problem. We don't have evidence of how widespread or how deep that particular aspect of the corruption is. But the one that is clear to me is that the problem with the judiciary and the lack of independence and the different type of corruption arises from the process by which judges are appointed. Once judges are not appointed through a process where it is based on objective and meritorious criteria, once judges are appointed because they have political godfathers or judicial godfathers, then there's corruption right from the get-go. Because if you became a judge because a particular governor or senator or president or minister whispered in the ears of the appointing authority and you were appointed a judge, of course, if that person who put you there has an interest in a matter that's come before you, the chances are that you will feel obliged, to repay the favor. And that is a fundamental problem that the NBA is also now. I mean, it's not something that I've always known it, but I think the NBA is now seriously looking at it, that we must get involved in the process and pay more attention to the process by which judicial officers are appointed. My Lord Justice Williams has just spoken about the NJC. The NJC is not a machine. It is populated by judges. It is populated by human beings. So we really need to look at not just the institutions, but the people that make up the institutions, because it's those people that have to operate those institutions. And until we address that fundamental problem, I don't think that this issue is going to be resolved. And I generalize because we have some very, very good judges. We have outstanding judicial officers. But the truth is we also have quite a few who are not fit to be judicial officers.
Justice Williams and Dr. Ajibade, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
I've been in conversation with retired Justice Olushola Williams and the head of the Judicial Committee, the Nigeria Bar Association, Dr. Babatunde Ajibade San, about contradicting judgments from courts of coordinate jurisdiction and how this may undermine confidence in the judiciary. Join me next month for another edition of Pivotal. Have a wonderful evening.